If you've been trying to figure out how to write an email to sell your company's services, this video is going to break down the best practices for writing a highly effective email that doesn't feel overly salesy or pushy. And in fact, before we wrap up, I'm going to share with you a very specific email that you can use as an example and even swipe it from me. Before we get into all the best practices you do want to follow, let's talk about the three biggest problems with most outbound sales emails. The first problem is that they're not customized. They're one size fits all, or worse, they're using AI tools and other automation tools in order to create customization, but those tools aren't so perfect. And we all end up getting salesy emails in our inbox that has information about us that is so not true, and it immediately signals to us that they were going for quantity over quality, and they're just sending as many emails to as many people as they possibly can. For busy decision makers, that's an instant turnoff. The second big problem that you see with most sales emails is that the person writing it is making the assumption that the decision maker is in a ready now place to buy from them. So it's immediately going into the transaction looking for that sale. No credibility has been built, no rapport has been built. You don't even know if that decision maker has a need or a problem. It's just assuming that they do. And to the person receiving that email, it feels salesy, pushy, and it gets an instant delete. And the third big problem that you'll see with a lot of these emails, in addition to them being AI created and assuming that the decision maker is ready now to make a purchase, they will go into a closed-ended question, a yes or no question. Would you like to set up a time to talk? Or they'll ask a question like, can I send you a demo of this right now? Or can we set up a time to talk right now? Those are close-ended yes-no questions, and if the answer is no, then the email instantly failed. So you want to avoid all three of these things. It's going to annoy the decision makers, and it's going to position you as someone who is transactional and just looking to get to the sale as fast as you possibly can. So here are three things that you do want to do. The first is you want to make sure that your email is super short. Nearly 80% of emails received by decision makers are read on their cell phones. So at most, you want your emails to have 3 to 5 sentences. Each sentence is basically its own paragraph, and you want them to be able to read it in about 30 seconds. Number two, you want to make sure that your email is written to be helpful, not to sell. The goal here is to get the relationship started, not to get immediately to the finish line. And the third thing you want to do whenever possible is tie your email to the fresh start effect. Decision makers and humans in general are more likely to take action at the start of something new. Think about the new year, and everyone starts their New Year's resolution, and gym memberships spike. That's because there's the fresh start to the new year. You can use that same phenomenon in your outreach to decision makers. They're going to be much more likely to set up a meeting with you and continue the conversation in the relationship if what you're emailing them about is something that just started or is about to get started. All right, so let's take a look at a sample outreach email, and I'll share with you not just the language in this email, but why we're doing these things and why they're more effective than many of the things that you see people doing in your inbox. So let's take a look at a sample email, and I'll share with you why I'm doing the things I'm doing in this email so that you can apply them to your outbound emails as well. All right, let's take a look. So the subject line on this sample is simply a resource in your backyard. Hi, John. Congrats on the new office opening last month. I'm reaching out to introduce my firm because we may not be on your radar. We recently worked with Acme Co., also here in Cleveland, to help them reduce the number of months to fill key positions from 6 months to 6 weeks, a 77% improvement. Plus, the retention rate of their new engineers has skyrocketed. If you're ever frustrated with the length of time to fill key positions, I'd be happy to share how we accomplish this. Let me know if you'd like to schedule a time to talk. In the meantime, I'll shoot you a connection request on LinkedIn. We have a webinar coming up that you'd likely find of value. Warmly, Jane. There's a lot of things that this email is doing in just a few short sentences, starting with the subject line. It's not overly pushy and it's leveraging a shared connection that they are both in the same city. You can always find a shared connection with almost every decision maker you reach out to, but most of all, you want to keep those subject lines easy breezy, lemon squeezy. Then we say, "Hi, John, congrats on the new office opening last month." That's really leveraging that fresh start effect. It's truly customized and it's playing into something that's actively happening for the organization, which is really showing that you've done your homework. And we're also tying it to the fact that we know that in this case, if a company is opening a new office location, they're growing, they're expanding. That probably means that they're hiring. Then we say, "I'm reaching out to introduce my firm because we may not be on your radar." There's not a whole long paragraph to explain every last thing about this company. Right in the auto signature is going to be the name of the company, their website, all sorts of information. We're merely saying, "Hey, tap, 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 we're here in the same city as you. You probably don't know about us, and you probably should," which is super helpful and not salesy. Next, we say, "We recently worked with Acme Co." So obviously Acme Co is merely a placeholder that in this case, I'm coming from the perspective of a recruiting firm, but you can do this kind of email no matter what your area of expertise is. And we're mentioning another company because that pulls in social proof. The idea that you're not just working with small business owners, that you are working with other companies that they may very well recognize. And even if they don't, we're pointing out, "Hey, by the way, they're also here locally." Again, it creates that sense of connection and proximity, which is really important psychologically to decision makers. Then we go right into a result. We're not even explaining what we do, we're just sharing a result to help them reduce the number of months to fill key positions, in this case from 6 months to 6 weeks. But notice we do something else here too, a 77% improvement. It's so important to always share results as a percentage, not just as a flat number. Because let's say your one client is a massive, massive company, and now you're reaching out to a much smaller company. That flat number might not translate so well. By putting it into a percentage, it's always going to be relative to whatever size organization you're talking to in your email. Then we go on to say, if you're ever frustrated with the length of time to fill key positions, we'd be happy to share more. We're not assuming that they are frustrated. We're not assuming they're broken and they necessarily need us to come in and fix them. We're merely saying, "Hey, we're here if this is a problem or a challenge for you." That tone is helpful versus pushy. And then lastly, we're keeping the door open. We're not asking them a yes/no question. We're saying, "I'll shoot you a connection request on LinkedIn," keeping the ball in our court, that there's going to be another touch point for us, and also planting the seed with them that we have a webinar coming up that we think you'd find of value. Again, that's keeping the door open, letting them know you're going to hear from us again because we're going to be inviting you to that webinar. That makes sure we haven't painted ourselves into a corner with our outreach email. And lastly, we're just signing off very simply and making sure, of course, that you have your auto signature on the bottom so that they have your full contact information, including your website and your company name. That's what a good outreach email looks like and why it's going to be more effective than most of the outbound emails that are landing in your inbox that you're constantly deleting every day. So of course, having an outbound email that you can use is just one step of the process. There's a lot more to this. So I dropped a link in the description below on how to sell to Fortune 500 companies. I highly recommend if you want to dig into this more. So click on that link now and I will see you there.